Presentation in our series on AI and the future of design, organized by the IDC. And what we want to do in this series is reflect a bit on the role of AI in design and design in AI. And so we already had two speakers, John Giro, who is sort of father of design and AI, who has been working in that field from the 80s onwards. So he gave an overview of how that has developed. And then we had 2 weeks ago now, we had Yarif from Google, who also reflected on the role of AI in design. And today we have with us Minh Dao, and he is contrary, there was a mistake, we apologize for that, for the flyer. Minh Dao is not a lecturer at the university in Australia, but he is, as Fortune also in the invitation, he is an award-winning Canadian designer, but also he's currently a design principal at Autodesk. And he has also previously worked and innovated for companies such as Shopify, Element AI, and IBM Watson Analytics. And we had some really nice talks already before, because this series is really about reflecting on that combination AI and design. His current focus is really on the future of digital product design and artificial intelligence. And as you can see, his title is not how design can benefit from AI, but how AI can benefit from great design. So we are looking forward to this talk and see from someone who has that combination of design and AI and works for a company of Autodesk, what his view is on this. So I would like to hand over to you, Minh Dao. And as those of you who know the procedure, if you have questions, please use the chat. And after the presentation, I will go and moderate the questions that are in the chat. Good, without further ado, now please, you can share your screen. You should be able to. Thank you.
So, do you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
It's
okay,
not a presentation mode though.
Okay, good to know. Okay, well, thanks for having me and thanks for the intro. Once again, I'm Minh, and I'm going to give a quick lecture on how AI can benefit from great design. And as we were discussing before, it's interesting to hear the perspective of, mostly it's about, how designers can benefit from AI. But in my case, in a lot of the things that I've been working on and applying AI and, recommender systems and other things like algorithms and recommender systems, like I said, a lot of AI can benefit also from design in a lot of ways. So I'll definitely go through that on my presentation. So what I will go through today is a little bit about myself and the context I have and the perspective I'm offering. Quickly, since what the series is about the future of design and in relation to AI. I love to talk about the trends and discuss that. I love to answer about, will design be automated? It's very much a question that I hear a lot in our industry. And I will show a case study that I've worked on the last couple of years, working with AI researchers and collaborating from the design side and trying to we have some hypotheses and some objectives in figuring out, what makes great AI and how design can help that, and human AI collaboration. And again, just kind of summarizing how exactly does design AI benefit from design. And I want to harness specifically on some parts of that around the importance of trustability, and then I'll have some concluding statements. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I am Canadian. I am currently in Montreal, Canada. It's currently, I think I'm 12 hours behind you guys, so it's 9:30 to 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. here. So it's closing out my day. As was mentioned, I'm a design principal currently at Autodesk. Currently working on media and entertainment, so around the future of film and TV and video games. You look at the picture at the bottom right, if any of you guys are watching Disney and Star Wars or Mandalorian, but that gives you kind of a glimpse of the things I'm looking into and researching around, and it's around tools in the future of how we see film and TV going. And so what I'm showing there is a 360 LED environment stage, and also above of them shooting a scene for Mandalorian. And this is using multiple technologies, including some from Autodesk, to achieve this. And so there's a lot of benefits from this, and it's just super interesting. I'm sure like many of you are like myself in the way that you're watching a lot of TV and film on Netflix during the pandemic. And as you see that increase in CG, which is almost in every single show, even Queen's Gambit, if you can think of it, has a lot of great CG in there as well to make such a beautiful movie. It's changing the way in which TV and film is being done from now and into the future. So that's kind of a lot of my current context. But a lot of things I'll show is more related to the research I've done in the last 2 or 3 years, before Autodesk as well, as I was more focused on AI and the infancy of that and where design fits. As you see the picture above in the top right, that's the company I used to work at called Element AI, which has now been bought by ServiceNow. This is in our AI hub in Montreal. It's attached to Mila, which is a AI institute. As some of you probably know, attached to the University of Montreal, and it's headed by one of the, we call it the AI godfathers, at least here anyway, is Yoshua Bengio. So as you can see, they're obviously very close together, close to a lot of the private companies around the hub and around the university. What I also want to get through is, I realize I'm a creative person here offering that lens, and I'm talking to technical people about technical things. So just realize, though I do touch a lot of these things, the lens and the things I'm offering is around a designer's perspective, but one who's touched a lot of AI and a lot of data and analytics and algorithms in large tech companies and prominent ones who are trying to innovate. So that's kind of a lot of my career and a lot of things I'm interested in. I research and what I work on. And just a disclaimer, of course, any of my the thoughts and opinions are my own and not the representative of Autodesk. So things I'm showing here, you'll see it's not a lot of Autodesk stuff, but nonetheless, if I have opinions, they're entirely my own and how I think as a designer. So I'll preface this to say that, the good news about this presentation is I curated and created this within the last couple of weeks. And so it's new and it's curated towards a subject. On the downside is I'm not sure if it's going to translate well, as you guys are kind of a guinea pig on how I'm going to translate what I'm trying to say. So if you're ever lost, feel free to ask the questions or interrupt. And I'll try to, hopefully you guys will follow through. And if you notice on the bottom here, I have a lot of these notes. It's just easier for me to follow. So you don't have to read these little tiny captions on the bottom here. So the first thing I want to talk about in this presentation is what is the future of design and AI. So I think before we talk about, what can AI benefit or how I look at these things and when I do research for companies like Autodesk is, I try to look at the trends and understand, where are things going, so we can better make decisions on how we're going to design these products, right? So I'll summarize some of this, and apologies to any of you who are currently in the AI discipline at the university. This is going to be old for you, but I'll try to be quick and summarize, and I'll apply my thoughts on how I see these things, the perspective of this AI itself. So the first video I'll show is about 1.5 years ago. I was at the Tokyo Motor Show, and I like this quite a bit as a designer. What you're going to see here is a scene in which people are kind of demoing what a Toyota experience would be like in a completely autonomous vehicle. And why I like this is it represents a lot of the values and principles I think are going to carry into the next decade, and definitely the next 5 years, as we start seeing more autonomous vehicles on the road, and technology increases and we get more electric vehicles. And it's one of which, we're reducing the amount of, as you see in this car, the amount of physical interfaces and things. And so it really talks a lot about what the discipline of design is going to be, versus to what it used to be. And so we're seeing our job change quite a bit, and into environments like this, and trying to conceive and experience what this experience would be like. And if you notice in this video, I mean, it's just a demo, but it's, to me, it speaks volumes of how few knobs or anything that you see here. There's almost no interface. So I'll just show this really quickly. So I can't understand Japanese, so I'm not too sure what they're talking about, but I'm assuming they're showing how there's going to be some privacy here, and she's able to do a call while she's in the car. So again, what are the things and experiences which people are doing? Less interfaces. I think this is a trend we're going to see more and more of. Again, this is very conceptual, but this is how these are very intriguing trends that I see throughout design. It's just the idea of less interfaces, especially ones that are less explicit and more implicit. And I'll talk more about that later. Let's run through a bit. Now you see a lot of images, and you see a lot of concepts, but like what I like about this is they're kind of walking through a journey map, in designer words, of what would one experience in a vehicle, assuming you don't have to drive, and what are the activities you'd want to do. I think this is a little bit fluffy, and it's fun, but it's really a question that I know a lot of my other colleagues are working on, and figuring out what is this going to look like in the future. As I feel it's almost a certainty that it's a matter of when instead of if. We'll stop it there. It's just continue goes on. So the next thing I want to show is AI that was released by OpenAI, I think it was about a few months ago, so it's quite recent. And this literally blew my socks off when I saw this. When I used to work in AI, more specifically, we talked about what is possible, especially giving text, natural language kind of text in order to drive a bunch of actions and tasks. And to me, this is, I thought this would be, years out. And to me, this is, voodoo magic kind of stuff. And so what you're seeing here is, and apologies again to those in AI who have already seen this stuff, you're basically giving it a text prompt to this model. And in this case, it says, a storefront that has the word OpenAI written on it, and it's generating these unique images. And to me, that's crazy. It's not like searching a database or anything. It's literally completely coming up with something novel. And in the bottom, go further, it's suggesting text prompt, the exact same cat on the top as a sketch on the bottom. So it's giving a reference image, and it's giving instructions that it wants it in a sketch, and it can understand what's asking, and it's producing those images on the bottom. Again, to me, this is crazy, and obviously it's a bit nuts in terms of a designer. These are things I would be asked to do, maybe not sketch a cat, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a creative, kind of gets more closer towards a creative discipline. And on the right, if you really want to see how nuts it is, and if for you guys who think this is great and cool, I recommend you go to the website and look up this Dalio model. And so what they're doing here is you can change a few of the text prompts on the website. And one thing you can choose is Pikachu in pajamas sitting on a motorcycle. And it's literally generating these unique images that you see here on the right. And to me, this is, it's crazy that we're kind of at this point in time, to me. So I look at this and I see what's coming out of science. It's still, very much in a vacuum. And so, but this tells you where the trajectory is kind of going, right? Moving on next. So this is Google NERF. Don't forget what the acronym stands for. But what I want to get here is, again, AI is rapidly getting better. And I think it's a lot faster than I was expecting. And especially kind of seeing the insides of a company, private company doing AI, the speed in which the larger companies are moving at. And in this case, NERF it's taking a few images and at different positions, and it's able to learn and create a 3D representation from that. So let's play this video quickly.
For the scene geometry. So here's a fly-through video of that Brandenburg Gate dataset where we're moving the camera but not changing the appearance. Here's a side-by-side with the original neural radiance fields paper, which has some significant artifacts because it doesn't have a way to account for transient occluders or variable appearance. We evaluated our approach on 2 other scenes from the phototourism dataset. This one is of the Trevi Fountain in Rome. Just like in the original NERF paper, we can extract high quality depth maps from the scene by just seeing where arrays terminate. And remember that our model doesn't just recover a single model of the scene, but is instead modeling the appearance of the scene in every individual input image. Here we're iterating through different appearances in the training set. Now, because those appearances correspond to embeddings in a low dimensional latent space, we can smoothly interpolate between embeddings to smoothly interpolate between appearances, as we're doing here. Here we're comparing to neural re-rendering in the wild from CVPR last year, and we see that our model does a better job of disentangling 3D structure from lighting effects and stabilizing things temporally, and just generally produces higher quality renderings. Here's another result from our technique where we're just rendering the static model while moving the camera.
So to me, this is very impressive. Essentially, there was many different fronts for innovation, especially in AI that we looked at. We look at NLP and text, you look at images, in OCR, in 2D images, and really the much harder frontier, which you're seeing a lot of innovations in papers, is around 3D. And as I work in film and in TV now and media, the 3D world is one in which AI is getting better and better at grasping, and I think will continue to move that trend, and one of interest to me and designers. You see a lot of designers now picking up a lot of 3D tools as well. So again, this is kind of the trend, and as we see AI getting better at this and doing in the 3D world, I think we'll see more products and just more offerings in this area. So, I mean, this is a pretty obvious statement, but one that you have to assume is going to happen. And I just want to make it clear is, we will see an increase in GPU performance. This is important. GPU performance is one of the bigger indicators or dependent on what can be possible in terms of the ability of how much data and what we're able to run in terms of the models. So there's a correlation or dependencies on like what we're going to be able to do is limited by the technology and the GPUs that we have. And I think the OpenAI model that I showed you there, I think there was other things in there, but that model itself cost, I mean, it was estimated $4.6 million just to build that model. And so the costs are quite still high. If you ever tried to buy a GPU now, it's like literally impossible. I mean, I've always tried to buy one, and it's impossible to buy one at this point. So demand is very high, cost is very high, and we just, as it becomes more ubiquitous, we have more GPUs, and it'll only increase, more people working on the problems and improvements in AI itself. So summarize it all up again, whether you agree with me or not, we can always have a discussion at the end, but this is generally how, I can see things going. Some of it more obvious than others. So one around design is going to see a lot less interfaces. People are going to be spending more time, designers are spending more time focused on experiences and less on knobs and physical things to give instructions to machines. So less interfaces for sure. It's your Alexa, your Series, you're using your voice, things are implied, gestures and whatnot. Increase in adoption rates of AI are going up. Obviously, we're seeing, everywhere. Again, I'm talking about Siri, talking about your autonomous car. These are obvious statements, but it's only going to increase, right? We're all going to have it all over our lives and use it everywhere. It's kind of slowly creeping in our lives, but we're going to see it more and more and become a lot more visceral and into things like, I don't know, you can go down to a corner store and maybe it's completely autonomous and it's using X AI technology to read your face and whatnot. So adoption is going to keep going up. More people are going to be interfacing with these things. More automation, as I just mentioned, more generative stuff, things like we see in Autodesk right now, recommender systems, repeatable process automation. Like these things are just continuously changing way industry is working, finding different use cases. It's going to go up. So we're going to have more automation in the world. Increase in GPU technology, as I mentioned, increase in AI benchmarks. And then, as I mentioned, AI abilities in text, 2D and 3D. So these are, where it's going. And something I'm going to talk about next is around type 2 thinking problems for AI versus type 1. And for those who don't know where the concept's from, it's from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which I will get into next. So the next thing I want to talk about, other than that topic, is to answer this question. But wait, what will the future of design be automated by AI? And this is an important question to ask because we talked about, how AI design can benefit from AI, but, vice versa. Is it true? And I think the first question you ask, and a lot of designers ask ourselves, are we also potentially our jobs at risk? And so I think the answer really lies in this book. And I've seen a lot of research papers talking about this. And so let's talk about thinking fast and slow and system 1, system 2 thinking. As you see here on the slide, it's 1's intuitive and instinctive, and system 2 is around rational thinking. And so essentially, dumbing it down more simply, is that AI is actually pretty good at doing system 1 type thinking, and so and not notoriously good at system 2. And it's where the focus, from my understanding, is where a lot of the time is being spent in trying to solve those problems. If I had to give you a good example of this, it would be like asking an AI or machine to say, like, what's on what's the third word on chapter 2 of this given book, and it should be able to know that word. But humans are actually not that great. I wouldn't be able to do that in any book. But what's not good at is what we're good at is saying, summarize this Lord of the Rings book in a couple sentences. What's it about? And that's something AI is not really good at. It's hard to train it because it's hard to give it really good examples of a 2 sentences that explains Lord of the Rings. It's just not easy for us to do right now, and something that humans are good at. So my statement here around, to answer this question, is that design, and this is kind of backed up through different research and articles I've read, is design thinking, design processes are based on both system 1 and system 2 thinking. So no, I don't think I do believe that the design will and can be automated like any other industry, and a lot of system 1 thinking will be replaced by automation. I think like every way you can cut up a website, design has been thought of or created. I think like something like that is such a low-hanging fruit to be done by a generative model to do that for you. So things like that are going to be replaced, and system 2 thinking is a bit harder, and the balance of the two, I think, is the problem that needs to be solved. So one day could it be replaced completely? Sure, but I think I use the 80-20 rule. 80% is probably going to be replaced, but the 20% of what makes great design, innovative or unique, like a unique piece of art or music, is really in that 20% of what makes 80% amazing, right? So that's my thoughts in general on this topic, and I'll back it up with somebody who of a better credentials and profile. If some of you know, this is Tobias Van Schneider. He's fairly well known and known designer in the digital design world, and he's known to be from being a former art director and product designer at Spotify. And so this was a quite contentious article he wrote about and conversation that was happening online. And he wrote about this specific thing: can AI replace the work of a UX designer? And he goes on to say, if I can guess, about 80% of UX designers do today will be automated in the coming 5 to 10 years. Some designers will be able to adapt just fine, and some will struggle. It's the same thing in most industries, whether we like it or not. We still don't know exactly what tools we will build to leverage AI in the way that that can become dangerous for us. But right now, AI is just a thing. It's a playground that can do a lot of things, but nothing really well. But give it 5 to 10 years, and things will look quite different. So again, I agree with the statement, and it was one that was quite controversial within the design community. So again, just a lens of how things within the design discipline and how we're dealing and how we see AI. Okay, so now that we talked a little bit about the future of design itself, and of one that I think is going to exist on some levels. Where can AI benefit from great design? So how can it benefit from great design? And so what I want to point is this research R&D project that I did working with AI researchers and developers, partnering with this company called Essence, which is a fashion retailer here in Montreal. And so as you can see in the pictures on the right, what we're taking here is a large data set of images of fashionable apparel that they're selling. And what's great about their data set, as you can see in both examples, it's great for our needs to train a model, because the poses are all the same. They look very similar. And so that is great for us to be able to train a model to say quickly. And so with this data set, we then trained a model to generate unique styles. Is what we were trying to achieve. And so for those less AI inclined, the analogy I use to tell designers, it's like giving a child who knows nothing about the world a book about birds. And let's say in this case, it's 50,000 plus pictures of birds. And we're asking it, draw us a picture of a bird. And so these are the results we were getting, and this is what we wanted to test. And so our first results were not so great. Essentially what was happening is we built the model, and it was generating a bunch of unique designs very, very quickly, almost infinite. And so it was just spitting out raw images on a database, and I was pulling them out, literally looking at one at a time. And you get stuff like this, which is beautiful abstract art, but not exactly a style we can use to grab inspiration for more clothes with, right? And so we went back to drawing board. It's like, okay, this is too hard. Like for us to grab things that we can inspire us, we'll have to do more. And really the insight here is that, the AI itself is only as good as the instructions we give it. And in this case, we just told it draw a bird, and the bird was 500 feet and, I don't know, shiny and glossy, but it's like, no, we want, a regular bird, and it looks, it's got 2 wings and whatever. So we didn't give it any of these requirements at all. And so we started creating rules around it. And what we had started discussing more about and collaborating on is how we describe it in design is a job's to be done. And in the case, I, as a design director who's directing the design, is giving instructions to a junior. So somebody who's going off and producing some of these concepts. So what kind of interactions am I expecting in these roles as a designer for somebody who's using this tool? And so when you think of that role that we traditionally have with team two people in a design firm or studio is, I'll go and say like, hey, go create me 100 designs for this next fashion, season. And they'll come back and I'll look at them like, no, this is trash. This is good. This is great. This is bad. And it's like a little more like this, a little more blue. And so that was kind of the turning point for me in helping move this forward. Was we need a way in which I can have a conversation and collaborate with the AI like I would with an assistant or a junior designer and be able to produce better outcomes and designs that can inspire us to create that line. So that then made us to create an interface on top of the model. And so so this is kind of what we got. So I'll show this video quickly. We presented this at NER-IP's AI conference. And so it was on a tablet, people could walk by and play with it. But essentially what you're doing here is you can pick 4 edges that you like. And what it's doing is extrapolating a gradient of concepts between those edges. So, and it's almost infinite, so it can just continuously come up with more and more ideas. And so this wasn't, you know, we had intentions, but what we started finding out and what it informed my research as a designer is that the power that AI was able to deliver, but with a collaboration with a human. And so it was trying to take the power of what a human does really well, and knowing what looks good, what styles are great, and taking the power of what AI can do really well, which is, it is literally coming up with infinite concepts, in seconds, which is something, human, I mean, I can't even do it in my own day job. And another great thing is bias. It's strength and a weakness of AI, but it's only as biased as the data you give it. But in this case, it was quite a great thing, because for us, we didn't tell it about, gender or which race. And so we didn't give it those parameters. And therefore, as you can see these images, it's kind of gradient between, even a man and a woman, or a black person and a white person. And it's able to just create on its own without those biases or stereotypes, which is it was a great thing to see. And it was interesting because it wasn't intentional. And what's also cool is you see these designs, we have these ideas of what, what clothes are. So it's like, this is pants, this is a shirt. And in this case, when we show, the book of birds, it doesn't really know this. It sees a lot of examples, but it has no concept of a dress or pants or a shirt or a head. It's basically just coming up with things, and it's just giving such a different lens and perspective on creation. And so, I mean, that's great. And so you see a lot of diversity. And, it's great. Like in design, there's a lot of opinion. And so it doesn't offer an opinion. It just gives you what you're asking it to do, which can be great as somebody who's moving quickly and wants that. It doesn't tire either. Like if I've created 100 concepts before, your first one is probably a lot better than the last one. And obviously, if I'm working in the middle of the night, I can use this whenever I want. So we're starting to realize, what great value one could have having AI and humans working collaboratively. And yeah, so I think that's the end of the video. So here are some of the results that we had. There's some samples. I could find quite a lot. It's just from my website. You can see it's not perfect, but you get some of these pretty cool designs, I think, anyway. We try to move it even further, and we stretch it further by taking some of the designs and applied it to real clothes and see if people thought they were interesting or cool. So, it's nice in a vacuum to say, it can generate designs, but can we actually say it's actually doing something, giving us value, and a company could adopt this generative methods of creating. So yeah, those are the results and what we had. So to conclude, in better words, what I was trying to say is we can benefit from both the power of human and AI working together, often achieved through a well-designed product. Again, think of the tools that you use to do your work now as a designer. I'm using Photoshop and Sketch and other tools, and they're blunt. Like they just, you give instructions and you do it. But think of, we're moving towards these assistants, and the tasks that they're doing are way more or not riskier necessarily, but also more important. They're taking a lot more of the onus of the work, and we're able to create more with that together. So this kind of sums it up again. It's human. So in a lot of cases, we're going to see in the near future, and a lot of my research is that there's always going to be humans in the loop intervening and interacting with AI. And wherever there's a humans interfacing with an AI, there's going to be design. Put simply here, design is about how people interact with products and interfaces. That is pretty much the definition of modern day designing. And so AI-enabled products will often require human interaction or intervention, as I just mentioned. Great design will ensure these products are easy to use, safe, unbiased, transparent, and that it can be trusted. Some of my notes here quickly. Oftentimes we had a discussion just before this call about AI. I see oftentimes when I'm trying to apply AI that AI is used as a silver bullet. And another analogy I use is it's like trying to use AI as a sledgehammer, when really what you need sometimes is just a small chisel. And so what we've done through a lot of the research and using design thinking and looking at AI and how it's built is oftentimes AI researchers are trying to increase a given metric, right? So you say, dog and cat classifier, and you want to make sure the certainty that it can predict the two really well. And so their job is just really pushing the science to do that one metric really well. They'll put that metric really well. But, after they're finished producing that model, when it's applied, whatever the use case is, sometimes isn't exactly, it doesn't really translate to what the application is. And that happens so often. And a lot of times the researcher or the person creating the AI doesn't really get to see and input what's going to happen at the end, or has no understanding of what's happening at the end. And we see that a lot. And so a lot of the activities we did was building tools to allow AI developers and researchers to test in context their AI really quickly and kind of, scaffold something so they can test it. So think of like previewing code or something. And so that would allow them to get a sense of how it work in a given, you can give off the shelf buttons and give it a container and, a quick interface. So we're working on these tools, and I see it very often where the AI lacked design intention. And even though the model was really great, it didn't really satisfy the actual objective at the end of the day for the product. That happens a lot. So here I want to give an example of how design can really deliver a great AI experience. And so this is one that exists now. It's not just a research paper. This is a company from Scandinavia, I forget where exactly, but Autodesk had acquired recently. I'm very excited to see, and it's about, always wait before I show that. It's an AI architectural design tool, and it's able to iterate different layouts for a given buildings and a given developments very quickly. And you see how the different values and principles I showed within the case study is applied here in a more form product. So here they're taking a plot of land and inserting it into the program. And you see very quickly they're able to modify and generate a layout of, a development. And so you can give it some rules, instructions. There's going to be rows in here, so it's got to change the layouts. We can take into consideration sound, sort of how to reduce sound from the environment, wind tunnels, make sure that there's optimal light coming in. So this one's around, I think it's around sound, decibel levels. And optimizing for wind here, seeing how that works and simulating it. So you can imagine here how much time it can save. Like from a lot of the interviews and research I've done with users is they spend a lot of time iterating a lot of concepts. So you kind of want to see these developments in several different outcomes or designs, right? So for them, they're able to iterate very quickly. Like I mentioned, the case study, very similar. And you see a lot of different options and try different things very quickly. And it's able to kind of fill in the details that are more technical and harder. And they can spend more of the mental time and space thinking about, how do I make this, the best, living space possible, rather than just optimizing on the details. So one of the last things I want to talk about, and I had mentioned in terms of those values that I had framed on what design, where AI can benefit from design, and specifically is around trust. And I'll explain why I think it's really important. So trust is an important output of great design in AI-enabled products. To fully benefit from AI and automation, we'll need to trust it. And so this is from an article that I wrote with other colleagues. And this is basically on the thinking, as we have more automation, we require more trust with our product, with our products and the things that we interface with. And so you think of the tasks that an AI can have. It could be something as simple as recommending you a movie or whatever, and that's had such a low trust requirement. So he probably has to give you, we might say, a descriptive of why it suggested that thing. And so it says, I chose this movie for you based on the last 3 movies you watched, or you like Tom Cruise or whatever it is. And so that's one of the trust levels that's required. And as the things get more risky, not just on a movie that's getting right or wrong, it's a more about your health or about your safety. We need to establish more and more trust. And so the levels you're seeing here along the y-axis is the types of design, type of AI the types of AI, the automation that you're getting. And as you move up, you require more automation. So as I mentioned, recommending something, it can be descriptive and telling you, how it got X, recommendation. But then as you can move up, we can get to, you can be prescriptive. So maybe when you're on your way home, unlocks your doors and whatnot. And so it's doing these things kind of automatically for you. And as that goes up, you have to have more trust, and you have to be kind of able to question. He's like, oh, why did it open the doors? And it needs to be able to tell you why, you change the settings, or you always come home at 5 o'clock. And so this is kind of an important mapping that needs to be thought of, and something designers are thinking a lot of in the realm of AI. And as you get to further on the automation curve, it's like around preventative. So if you're thinking of maybe one day Bayer, like a healthcare company, can figure out if you're going to be sick. And so before you even get sick, it's suggesting you take X medication, whatever it might be. So at this point, it's your health, and it's preventative. So it's before things are even happening, it's reacting to it. And so that level of trust, especially towards your health, becomes way more important. And so these things need to be built in, not just the AI able to deliver on a given thing, but it needs to also be able to output this information for us to understand, how what it's doing. Yeah. So the statement I would have, with trust in implicit AI, it allows people to spend less time on repetitive, mundane tasks and more time focusing on more important aspects. In some cases, the amount of human and AI intervention of these tasks will change based on its confidence. This is where design is important on how to convey this to the user and allow for more implementation of AI. So again, the example of the car here, if you're not driving, 2 hours, whatever it is, what's actually happening here. And, these are the things that designers are working on, and it's more experiential. you know, if you think of this, of what a completely autonomous car experience will look like, theoretically, you know, you don't even have to open the doors or unlock the car or whatever. It will just kind of imply that you're at the door and it's going to open. And you really, only thing you really need to do is get in and say where you want to go. And everything else is just, you know, cherry on the top. It's what you're kind of seeing in this image. It really doesn't, you don't need to know anything. And it could even imply, you know, your facial gestures and things you're doing. So if you look like you're going to be sick, it might slow down, it might ask you, are you okay? And so you think of that world where there's no less actual knobs and things are implicitly being, you know, our inputs are implicit. And so the environment's engaging with us and we don't have to give instructions. And so in that world, we can remove from spending our time on repetitive tasks and more on important things and things we want to obviously spend our time on that they're more compelling. So I want to give you an example of this, and this is closer to things I'm looking at now, researching. And this is a YouTube video of these great guys around VFX, around movies and film and TV. And what I want to show here is around rotoscoping, which is a method of doing VFX in which you kind of crop a person or thing out so you can kind of do VFX behind it. And so a very, very tedious task, as you'll see. And and what I want to, you know, it's kind of culminating a lot of the values and things I've been talking about so far into, you know, a very real use case and real people working on things, and especially in a creative space. But you can see AI is beneficial, but then it needs to be applied in a given way. And there's a person using the thing. So I'm rambling now, but here's a better explanation through the video.
All right, guys, I got a challenge for you. We're gonna have a race today. And the race is a rotoscope race. We have to cut out Clint from this little shot I took of him dancing. Trust me, it's a very important shot. It's essential that I have him separated from the background. Now, I need to figure out the best technique we have for rotoscoping what's faster. So we got doing it by hand, painting style. That's Griffin will take that over. We have old-fashioned basic After Effects masking. Clint will take that over. Peter here, he's got more cutting-edge tools. He's gonna Rotobrush 2.0 it. Matt here, always trying to come up with a curveball. He's gonna use Mocha, and I'm gonna use a secret weapon. It's done when there's an explosion behind you. When you're doing your cartwheel, if there's an explosion going off behind you and it looks good and clean, it's done. And whoever finishes rotoscoping the shot first, ding your bell, you win a candy bar.
Nice! That's what I'm talking about! Now we're talking, dude!
May the best roto artist win their favorite candy bar.
Have a look.
So stressful. Today, I'm going to be rotoscoping by hand each individual frame. Sometimes the traditional way to do things is the way to go. I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm going to win this.
How many frames in are you?
Well, I'm almost done with the first frame. And let's see how many frames there are. I don't think there are too many. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh.
The trick with manual masking, manual rotoscoping, is to do it limb by limb. I'm gonna go like as fast as possible. I'm gonna start with my head, and then I'll probably do like my torso.
You need to separate the arm from the body. Cannot rotate both the arm and the body at the same time.
You start with your keyframe at frame 1, and you end with a keyframe on frame 0. So no matter what, you have the first and last frame rotoscope. Anything in between, it starts out real crappy, and it gets better and better and better and better.
5.5 minutes, guys. What's taking so long, huh?
I will be doing Mocha Pro. I'm using Mocha Pro today, and it has this awesome magnetic spline tool, so I can take his silhouette and it basically sticks to the edges of him. That is my secret weapon. So we'll see what we can do here.
Dude, I'm freaking chilling here. Look at all these frames I got so far. I've barely done any work. So I'm going to be rotoscoping with the After Effects Beta Rotobrush 2. The original Rotobrush was like fine. It was a little janky, but it worked in some situations. But the second one is using some kind of AI magic, and it's amazing. It works super fast, and you barely have to tweak it. The only problem I'm having is like, it's eating up Clint's crotch here.
Excuse me?
Sorry, it's eating up Clint's crotch. I think I'm gonna be right behind Nico. with his fancy AI. I think I'm going to come in second here.
What's going on, Nico? How's your progress here?
I mean, I'm pretty much there.
Pretty good. Whoa.
It's pretty dang good.
6 minutes. It's been 6 minutes.
So I'm using Runway ML's new green screen tool, which is actually a rotoscoping tool. It's actually a site that you access through your browser. And they have this AI model, this machine learning model that they trained specifically for cutting things out. You know, I was a little worried, like Clint being upside down, you know, is that going to throw off things? Like, does orientation matter to an AI? Because it matters to us. You know, we look for things to be oriented a certain way. I think I need more explosion. So do you have to render it? Finish it? What? You did what? Are you rendering it right now?
It's in my render queue.
There's no chance for me then.
Let's use renders faster.
I need to set up my QuickTime settings.
Yes! Oh, but look at how bad it looks, though.
Look at it in motion. It's 5.
Yeah. Let's see what you got. You think you beat it? Let's see what you got. Yeah, not bad.
It's all me.
Rotobrush is pretty good.
There's like a ton of artifacting. I totally phoned it in a little bit.
What is this?
Don't worry about it.
What is that?
Don't worry about it.
What's all this
Nico.
background?
I was there, and then I heard you picking out your explosions, and I was like, I need to just finish those.
Well, hold on. I mean, you want to see mine?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh, that's like,
Dude,
better.
dumb.
It's definitely better than Rotobrush.
That's clean. That's so clean as hell. Because usually with AI, you know, you're trading speed for detail.
Yeah.
But with this, you're getting both.
How far did you guys get?
I got like a head.
Dude, I got really far. I got about halfway done with my first frame.
Yeah.
You actually
That's good. That's solid bean, son.
It's just my torso in my head.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought you said you're gonna have the first frame and the last frame.
For my torso in my head.
I was actually not expecting Rotobrush 2 to be as fast as it was. But it was super fast. A little dirty, but still super fast. Rotobrush 2, which is AI enhanced, and then Runway ML, which is even more AI enhanced. I literally had that shot rotoscoped in 30 seconds. And I spent too much time getting my explosions comped.
I got you there.
But I did have 3. So yeah, AI is pretty crazy. Let's just explore.
There you go. So hopefully that's a good example for you to see, you know, where we are now and how things are applied. And like, this is very much like the lens in which I work in now in the context of industry of media and entertainment. So my concluding statement on this is AI-enabled products can greatly benefit from design, often through human collaboration. It allows for users to reduce their cognitive load and the need for traditional explicit controls. Once we are able to trust AI to assist us in our tasks, people can focus their energy on what's meaningful. And that's it. So thank you for listening. So I guess now I'll pause for questions.
Thank you very much, Minh, for your presentation and for the videos that show where we are today. I invite everyone to ask questions using the chat, and let me start with one. You talked about trust, and I agree that that is very important, you know, to trust the system. But if it's about advising me a new video, or you gave that example, then it's the risk of something, you know, if something goes wrong, you know, I just switch off the film if I'm not interested in that. But you can imagine that if this is used in more serious situations, or whatever, medical advice, or even in an autonomous vehicle, that it's not just trust, but liability. I might trust the system, but what if something goes wrong? Of course, trust will affect it through that. So I was wondering, and maybe just in the context of autonomous vehicles, how would you see that with the whole liability? Because one additional thing, the examples show how people interact with their environment, have wonderful experiences, but the environment also has other people around them. So I might trust my autonomous vehicle driving here on the motorway as long as there is no one doing weird things around me. Yeah, so we're always in another, there are always other people, other system around that may not act like we expected. So how would you see this trust and liability, and would liability and liability claims put a limit to what we can do legally with AI? Or what would be your views?
Yeah, I mean, I have to remember exactly. I wrote an article specifically on this, but what I mentioned is, you bring an interesting point. Like, as a doctor, you take the Hippocratic Oath, and it says to do no harm, and the doctor's liable for any advice it gives or any harm it does to a patient. And if AI is in a position where it's potentially one day we could have more democratic healthcare, but the versions of healthcare that's more affordable is automated. And what happens if we get things wrong? And it's obviously a relevant question that I'm not probably one to answer, but the lens I would give, and it's maybe one that's a bit dark, but one that I think is also interesting to think of is, I mean, it's more a bit sci-fi, is think of, I could see when you go to pick a car like you do now, you pick one that's the safest, or you pick one that's really fast. And so, if you're not really driving, the things that you care about in the car are going to be very different. And so, similar to, when you talk to Siri or Alexa and you choose a car, you might want to pick one that's the safest, and that's going to keep from rolling over. But you may want the one that's whether it decides to hit a dog or go off the road into a ditch, you might choose a car that has a different personality, and the brands and the values it represents are going to be very different. And it sounds really dark, but like the model and the things that it cares about and values are going to be inherently involved with the brand and what they care about. And I joke around about this concept, but I think it's kind of cool. Like, if you think of the movie Her, or you have an assistant that through voice, I think of Alexa and Siri. I can imagine one day where I have a choice of who is my assistant and the persona and type of person they are, and you can choose one that's like very healthy, and it chooses to buy Uber Eats that's very healthy for you on your for you. But then there's also one that's your best friend who's nefarious and like buys you beer and like and it's more rock star. So you can have like the Snoop Dogg of AI assistants and versus one that's healthy and like The Rock or something. So I could see that in a way it's a choice. So I think we'll have the choice in the types of risk and things that and how we're going to trust the things. In terms of liability, I think it's still going to be human. And the joke I always have is, what are we going to do with the AI? Are we going to like turn, a robot or a machine that makes a wrong prediction and turn it into a very expensive like soda machine? Like you can't really put it in jail. Like you can't really have incentives for it to not mess up. And so it'll be very interesting to see a world where we have more and more of it. But I think the one thing that is true is when we have the decision between something that's more affordable, potentially risky, and one that's more expensive, we usually choose the one that gives a lot of value, but it's affordable. So the question I always ask people is like, would you ever go into like a grocery store or a Walmart that was completely run by machines or robots using AI? And they said, no, I'd never do that. Like, I want to buy food from real people and experience real people. But if I said, if a loaf of bread cost $1 instead of $5, they would obviously choose the value of like buying the same loaf of bread for $1 for the family. So, it's kind of dark, but I think the money and the value and how inherently much value you'll get out of the thing will eventually kind of override some of these problems, I think. So you're mute.
Thanks. Sorry, I had to mute it. Some questions came. Interesting presentation. I would like to ask how AI be used to handle constraints in design. For example, we've seen the AI-based city planning tool, but in reality, there will be lots of constraints like area population requirement, public area requirement, building cost limitations, and so on. Can AI take these constraints into account and optimize the solution? Or is it up to the human to filter the randomly generated results?
No, I mean, it's a great point, a great question. I think I'm very bullish and optimistic that those are the things it will solve. Of course, and I understand the question where it comes from, because there is constraints that we just assume that machine just doesn't understand. There's like nuance and more qualitative things. But when you talk about regulation, how far a fire hydrant has to be, how thick a curb is, everything, a room needs a window. These are very technical things that you can teach a machine to learn and say that, no, that's not going to work and that's going to be better. And I think, we can push it by giving it more examples and more right designs and rules to apply. In the case I showed with the space maker, it's utilizing rules and it's applying optimizations for things like material, for wind, for the amount of sunlight that every unit gets, optimizing for space, or like having more units in a given area, more green area. And so you're able already to optimize for these things. And a lot of times when I see something that's kind of close, but not quite there, like more constraints, I always just believe it. I've already been pleasantly surprised by what technology is able to do. So I feel pretty optimistic, but of course there's some limitations to this. When anything is rule-based, I feel like it's easier, low-hanging fruit, but I understand the question where understanding, I don't know, let's talk about like drainage, trees, natural, like more organic things, and tree roots growing over 100 years and will be too close to a building. Like there's codes for these things still, but I can understand how these constraints won't be easily understood by machines.
So what you're suggesting, of course, we have examples and it's learning from examples. But if we add some rules that we are using that might speed up the process, your example with the store was one of those. Yeah. Other than feeding it even more examples, maybe just add a few rules to make it faster, to let it work better.
That's it. Like, and so especially now, we talked about before, but it's very meta because I'm people are using the things that I'm designing, things that I'm creating now are for creatives, but I'm trying to apply design for creatives and also using things like AI. And so I was going to say, part of the thing is you have to apply rules and constraints. So it needs to be this, needs to be that color. But then you need to allow for creativity and uniqueness and random things to occur at the same time. So there's a balance of, of things looking structured and unstructured things happening, kind of entropy to kind of happen, if you will. And I mean, if you look at the space maker thing, there's a bunch of examples. You look it up online. You add like constraint. You add, I want a path here. Like the client wants a bunch of walking paths along the way. Draw them in, and then it's able to generate and on dynamically. And so as we have more examples from the world, like I said with the websites, like how many ways can we cut condos and developments, of course, again, to be super unique and have like the tallest building and interesting features, that's where high design comes in. But to say 80% of the way condos are implemented to optimize for, I think that's very capable of doing.
Okay, there's another question from Darren. What can you comment about human creativity and AI? From the example you gave, it looks like the human is in control to define the script for the AI to perform. Will we see a day when bots define their own scripts for themselves, or will humans want to have a seat at the table? And maybe that's even related to the liability that I mentioned before.
So that's a great question, and I love the question. So thanks for letting me answer it. I have an opinion, and then I try to use as much of historical data to back it up. And so, like, if you think of, everybody's read what's it called, *Sapiens* and those books about human history. We on this planet, we've always been the dominant, obviously, being, and so we're naturally used to being good at almost everything. And so if you look at history, if you think of like a horse goes faster, it can carry things, a human, but controls the horse though. And so it's never one in which we, of course, a horse has a bit of freedom, but essentially the human's always in control. You think of a car or a bicycle, like the human's always in control of these tools and these products, these physical things. And so what does a world look like, and how does a human feel when they're not the best at doing multiple things or doing the best at everything category? Because we're already seeing that happen. Like, you see AlphaGo and chess. I always joke with my friends all the time that, like, I expect in a decade from now I can play against a Boston Dynamics robot that's able to beat me at tennis. And so I already forgetting the question already. Constraints and rate itself. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question again?
Human creativity and AI. So bots can write their own scripts and do it without us.
So yes, I think, you're basically talking about AGI, so artificial general intelligence, which is OpenAI's kind of objective. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I just know we're going to want, there's two things I know. One is we're going to want control. Humans just inherently want it. I've argued the opposite, in that, like, people are sleeping inside of Teslas driving to work, and we've obviously implicitly let machines just control our lives to the point where you can go off a cliff and you don't really care. But the other side, when I look at creatives and design specifically in the research I've done, is that designers want, we value what humans create and less on what machines do. It's less unique. Of course, they probably will design on their own. I probably losing the genesis of the question, but I could see it one day. But humans do value uniqueness and things that are done by humans. But of course, maybe one day AGI will be able to write and do its own things. We're already seeing music and art and things being generated on its own. So I don't see why not.
Thank you. And Darren had a similar question, a related question, because we are here at an educational institution. So what should design students, or engineering students, I would even widen it to that, what should these students be studying in the next 5 years so that they are ready for industry?
Good question.
Only AI and design will come, or?
Whether I can answer the question, maybe I'll apply it to myself and my experience, and also what I hear as mentoring other designers, and especially in a world in the COVID, is that when I was in school doing industrial design, which is the study of designing physical objects for people, like glasses and phones and TVs and stuff that people touch. It's interesting because I've gone very digital, and I think, as you can see, technology is kind of everywhere in everything we're doing. And in a COVID world, we're talking through Zoom, we're only able to have this conversation currently, through digital means. And so to answer your question on engineering and what things, my anecdote will be that I think most professionals that I see that are, you use the word like unicorn, or very special, are the ones which I gravitate towards and work with, and the ones that are so important and I value their opinions and able to innovate and be leaders in their given industry, is to be T-shaped, but also X-shaped, as I've heard before. But I'll just stay with T-shaped. I don't know if that's a common term that you guys hear about, but T-shaped is around the concept of knowing one subject very, very well, and then understanding the knowledge across all the others as well. So being T-shaped is one of the most important things I have ever seen. And I take that a lot as well. In the book I'm reading, Ray Dalio's Principles, if you know Ray Dalio, and he talks a lot about this. He talks about being really a dumb person who's really good at knowing one subject, and his whole life and his whole career is about understanding all the things he doesn't know a lot about, or is very stupid about. And that's kind of my career as well. It's like, I understand design very, very well, and like visual, artistic, creative things, but I branched out and understood what AI is, and, coding languages, stacks, innovation, technology, engineering, like these are other disciplines, and even film and TV now. being T-shaped is one of the most valuable things I can see, other than adopting things like technology and engineering, technology specifically into the digital age. We're obviously going to see more and more of that, but please feel free to ask a follow-up question if I didn't answer that correctly. But being so broad, I think being T-shaped is one of the best things you could be, and I value in trying to strive for that. And others I gravitate towards, especially in entrepreneurial areas, are that. And moreover, my comment is one thing I'm working on now is working with academics, especially in AI, because a lot of them want to start new companies and apply the AI, but they have very little work experience and applying it and creating companies and building a startup. And so a lot of my work and time is spent around collaboration and diversity of thought and using design and teaching them design thinking. So the idea is, you cannot teach a simple-minded person like myself how to write Python and create AI. But if I can teach somebody much smarter than me how to utilize design thinking and design processes, I think you're much better off in solving problems in the real world and creating the next great things that I'll be happy to use.
Thank you. That's quite a also advertisement of our study here that is very interdisciplinary. Design is at the core, and we try to apply a designerly mindset to our processes. I was looking at the time. There are a few very interesting questions. So, Minh, if I may ask you maybe a quick answer to those, that I would appreciate it. Okay. So TC Toitati, thank you very much for the enlightening sharing. With increasing trust on AI to generate the various permutations of solutions or design, will that lead to an over-dependency on AI with decreasing creativity of designers or even reduced trust of our own decision-making capability? And I will link the question of Sophia there, which is very similar. When it comes to human learning and development, our experiences shape us, in that our brain needs stimulation from things such as problem solving and work to develop. And how would this then impact our ability to design when we, in a sense, slacked off and allow AI to help us think? I think both questions are sort of, we need to, even some mundane things are important to do in order to sort of learn and keep you, rather than letting the system do it. So what are your thoughts about that?
This is an area of concern and one which I think design is heavily involved, should be, if not already is involved in solving. And the terms and the words we use to define that is complacency with humans in the loop or with the end users who are utilizing the automation. So you can think of like, it's looking through applications for mortgages and you just like, the AI says it's like, oh yeah, this one's approved, and you're just like clicking yes, yes, yes. You're just watching the thing go through, and you're not really looking at any of them, and complacency sets in, right? You get lazy. And so I mean, I'll use the word like gamification, like things we can stimulate as humans, but ideally over time, unfortunately, for some, you're moving people away from these very mundane and like tasks that are just going to be way better suited for AI. And we're kind of in a weird space where both have to kind of live in the same space and doing the same jobs, and they're kind of being overtaken. But once that we kind of get to that level, I believe like, you'll get your person who's, looking at applications and they're spending more time on something way more important for that organization. Maybe these organizations will shrink and become fewer people, but I'm hoping that there'll be better types of jobs out there for us, like more creative things than just, me making a website. I'm hoping I can, really push boundaries of how film and TV and video games are created because of my tools are so much better and AI is able to generate so many things for me. So it's more of that lens, I think, than, of course, there's going to be, like coal miners, using these analogies. Horses getting replaced by vehicles. Like there's a lot of history there. Yeah, I can see the question, but hopefully I answered it short-ish time.
Thank you. One last one, and I think that's a nice concluding one. You have this this figure, maybe you can call that up again, with the trust levels. And the question of Shardul is in terms of trust level model, where are we today? And do you think we will reach the preventative level in the next 5 years? Where are we?
It's a good question. I never thought of that when I wrote this. So the very bottom one is like, okay, show me the data. Like, you're telling me I have 10,000 sales, and you show me a chart, show me the data that I can actually see, so I can go through it. We get to predictive. That's pretty much like your movie, or like maybe Uber Eats just buys you food every when it thinks you're hungry, or like if you're having a bad day or whatever it is, or you didn't make a meal and you were in the kitchen, kind of thing. Prescriptive, I think we're kind of towards prescriptive, and so we're able to generate different outcomes, and it's able to sorry, that's pressure predictive. How should I translate this? I think we're going to get to a point where they're going to take more riskier tasks and for us, and as that continues, I think the top two are going to be very important. The point I made in my article was, and you can find it maybe on my LinkedIn, is sorry, what's my point? Is we see people sleeping in a Tesla and it's autonomous. Value is more important than having these abilities and having the trust to back them up. And so if we can get there and it's able to do these things well and add a lot of value for us, we're just going to accept it as humans because the value is so high. Like, I'm willing to sit in my car for 2 hours and sleep because I can sleep, because my car can do it. And if it ends up in a ditch, I really don't care. And so it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the way in which human behavior has kind of historically led us to believe that's going to be going true going forward. So I don't know if it's like we're at this point. I think these things will just happen, and it's just like, well, how much trust are we actually going to need? But there's going to be more. We're going to need more of it, and it's going to have to talk to us back in layman's terms about what it's doing, and if it's nefarious, is Facebook and other things taking our information? What are they doing with it? Like, these things need to be transparent to us so we can trust the things that we're using.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you also for the audience for their questions and for listening and joining in to us. We've learned a little bit about how Autodesk is on doing things, trust, the importance of trust, related to liability, what we need to learn, and maybe our way of learning will be different, yeah, based on the different type of input than we had in the past. And maybe we have to adapt our education to that too. And also that maybe our trust in AI would increase if in the design of these tools, a designerly mindset would be applied. I think that it's a product, it's a tool like many other tools that require good design for it to be very. So thank you very much again, Minh, for this presentation. For the audience, we have recorded, as we always do, this presentation. So if you want to have a look at the IDC website, you will find soon this presentation, but also past presentations. This was the last of a series on AI and the future of design. And the next series that we are currently organizing will take place over the summer, and that is about ethics in design. We've already highlighted a few issues, and also in the previous talk, things about liability, but that will not only be limited to AI, that is in general ethics of design. So watch this space is all I can say, and hope to see you again during one of our next presentations of the IDC seminar. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and thanks again, Minh, for a wonderful talk. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye, everyone. Bye.